হ্যালো, আসসালামু আলাইকুম। মাই নেম ইজ বিদ্রোহী 2.0। আশা করি সবাই ভালো আছেন। আজকে একটা ভিডিও দেখতে চাচ্ছি, রিয়াকশন দিব। ফুল মেটাল অ্যালকেমিস্ট ব্রাদারহুড একটা অ্যানিমে। এই ভিডিওটা একটু অ্যানিমে রিলেটেড। যারা দেখতে চান তারা দেখতে পারেন, যারা না তারা চেলে ক্লিক অফ করে ফেলেন। আমার অন্য ভিডিওসও আছে, ওইসব দেখতে পারেন। কিন্তু আগে থেকেই বলে দিই, আই হ্যাভ নো পলিটিক্যাল অ্যাফিলিয়েশনস অর নো স্পন্সরশিপস। আই এম জাস্ট আ স্টুডেন্ট। আপনাদের যদি কোনো মন্তব্য থাকে বা কোনো কথা বলার থাকে, দেন ইউ ক্যান ইমেল মি অ্যাট দ্য জিমেল গিভেন ডাউন বিলো। তা দিয়ে ভিডিওটা শুরু করা যাক। The video in question that we are going to see is what is truth. It is it is like a documentary now. It is like a video summary agikar about a character in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood যেটা আমি দেখতে চাই. So yeah, let's go.
Consciousness of all humanity. But today we're going to talk about a huge similarity between a theme in Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood and Plato's system of beliefs. One thing that always stood out to me about anime in general is how they often have unique interpretations of God. In Code Geass, God is the collective consciousness of all humanity. In Death Note, gods are just mortal creatures who
Death Note Joss
extend their own tragically mundane lives by stealing years off of human lifespans.
Yep.
In Naruto, God is an alien? I don't know, the whole Kaguya subplot always confused me. But one of the incarnations that I find most intriguing is, of course, the Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood portrayal of the idea. One of the reasons that I find it so interesting is the sort of mystery surrounding the character. For much of the show, it isn't entirely clear what exactly he is, or why he appears the way that he does, in the forms that he does. But honestly, I think I found my answer to that nagging question. For those of you that somehow don't know anything about Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, first off, how'd you even get to this video? What series of events about the anime before any of this could have possibly happened with a show this hugely successful? But just to bring you up to speed, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood follows two brothers, Edward and Alphonse Elric, who suffered the loss of their mother in their youth and foolishly attempted the forbidden practice of human transmutation to bring her back to life with alchemy. However,
তার মানে তারা তাদের মাকে নিয়ে আসার চেষ্টা করতেছিল কালো জাদু দিয়ে। কিন্তু হ্যাঁ,
not only failed, but Edward lost his leg and Alphonse lost his entire being. Traumatized by their failure and his loss, Edward then sacrificed his arm to reclaim his brother's soul and bond it to a suit of armor. The result left Edward crippled and Alphonse trapped in an inhuman body, and so the brothers sought out a method of restoring their full selves. Now, if you haven't seen Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood and that summary intrigued you, I'd advise that you go and watch it now, as there are spoilers ahead.
There are spoilers ahead. যারা দেখতে চান এখনো, you can. But yes.
So I rambled a bit about God earlier. Where does he play into all of this? When Ed and Al perform human transmutation, they are both taken into the Gate of Truth, and there they both meet God. Their interactions with God are both entirely separate, and we don't really see Alphonse's experience. But the character that sat before Ed and the scene between them that we see in episode 2 informs us that he is the thing that humans know as the world, or perhaps the universe, or perhaps God, or perhaps truth, or perhaps all, or perhaps one. And also you. Scher's reference to himself using any of these names is uniquely interesting, but the name that we want to focus on today is Truth. Because when I hear that name, and that the name of the realm he inhabits is the Gate of Truth, it brings my attention to a very deep similarity to one of Plato's beliefs. But I'll get to that in a moment. First, let's take a look at the clues. Whenever we see Truth, he's in an empty dimension. It's completely devoid of any visible objects except for what appears to be his physical form and the Gate of Truth. All that we see is Truth's reflection of whatever character is currently using. He's like a white silhouette of whoever enters his realm. And while that's conceptually harder to distinguish because everyone more or less looks the same when you remove all their features, in some cases he possesses some of the features he's borrowed from his visitors. For example, he's appeared before Edward wearing our protagonist's arm and leg, and he's even appeared before Alphonse while wearing his entire body. Because no one ever sees these reflections.
Basically, the character in this show, that so-called God, he takes people's bodies and shapes because he is the truth. ও সত্যি, ও তুমি, ও হচ্ছে গিয়ে দুনিয়া, ও হচ্ছে গিয়ে পৃথিবী, ও গাছ, ও সব কিছু. So yeah, he is all.
Reflections of other characters, with two exceptions, both times that Ed saw Al's body inside the Gate of Truth, that suggests that these forms Truth takes on are not really his own. They're all truly nothing but reflections of the desire or the hubris or the real versions of the characters who visit his plane. So you're probably wondering why I name-dropped Plato earlier. Well, he's been one of the most influential writers in the history of the
Yup.
Western world. The Western philosophical community has largely accepted the idea that the physical world is not a proper object of knowledge since the work of Plato, and a belief that abstract concepts are not only real, but valuable, is called Platonism. Knowledge about the truth of the universe can only be extracted from abstract ideas that apply universally, like science and mathematics. Many of you may recognize Plato as being one of those popular philosophers from ancient Greece. He's
Yes.
well known for having been the teacher of Aristotle, who, as a quick
Aristotle.
side note, was the teacher of Alexander the Great, and also for being the author of 47 dialogues, many of which feature
Mashallah.
retellings of a man known as Socrates, who was Plato's teacher. However, instead of a modern teacher, their relationship was more like that of Jiraiya and Naruto. But instead of teaching the principles and techniques of fighting, Socrates taught Plato the principles of philosophy. In a number of his dialogues, Plato discusses his theory of forms, also known as his division of the line. A diagram of the
So the line, basically states of mind, intelligence, knowledge, thinking, objects, the good, intelligible world, forms, mathematical objects, world of appearances, visible things, images. So imaging and belief, আর এখানে thinking আর intelligence.
this division is being shown on screen now. Though in his dialogues, he
কিন্তু form of good, form of table, form of justice, form of cat. Gulliver, Kellogg's, Hoover. The theory of forms is the belief in a transcendent world of eternal and absolute beings corresponding to every kind of thing that there is and causing their essential nature. Things in the realm of becoming, things are spatio-temporal, changeable, sensible, copied, imperfect. Things partake, okay? Coffee table, dining table, okay? Constitution, Bill of Rights, Nuremberg trials. Okay, so yeah.
known as his division of the line.
So দুইটা realm আছে, একটা হচ্ছে কি যেটা যে জিনিস আমরা ধরতে পারি আর একটা জিনিস যে জিনিস আত্মা তারপর like soul spirit type.
A diagram of this division is being shown on screen now. Though in his dialogues, he presents them through conversations between other renowned philosophers of the time, usually framing his mentor Socrates as being the wisest of the bunch.
This
And as
picture
such,
is
it's believed that
so-
the ideas Socrates poses are the ones to which Plato himself subscribes. Plato talks about two worlds,
I like
the world of
Socrates
appearances
more.
and the world of forms. He believes that there is a
Plato is
fourfold
chill, but
division
so
between gods,
Socrates-
because his society was
Yeah,
polytheistic and believed in many gods, and men.
My mother studied on Socrates. So the world of appearances and the world of forms.
The world of appearances makes up the world of men, which is only a reflection of a more perfect world, and is also made up of the two lowest divisions of the line. Meanwhile, the world of forms makes up the perfect world of gods. Sensible things, things that you can see or hear or taste or smell or touch, those are all things of the worlds of appearances. To Plato, they're worth very little because they're only temporary.
Temporary.
Sensible things will all eventually decay given enough time,
সবকিছুই শেষ হয়ে যাবে, সবকিছুই একদিন নাই হয়ে যাবে.
purely through their own nature. This, of course, includes our own bodies. From Plato's
Aw.
perspective, because all of it is temporary and subjective, none of it can
Bro, Ed and Al looking so cute when they were ছোট ভাই.
our own bodies. From Plato's perspective, because all of it is temporary and subjective, none of it can truly be known to be real. Today we live in a very materialistic world. We know someone is worth
We live in a very materialistic world. Okay.
because of the money they've earned, which is demonstrated by the material things they buy with that money.
Yes.
To Plato, none of this matters, and none of it will bring you any closer
That
to
is why Plato doesn't matter.
truth or to knowledge. To him, the goal of man is to climb higher along the line. The top represents everything good. It represents knowledge. It represents truth. Ultimately, it represents God. We see him
So what if the top of the top, যারা সবার like hierarchy-তে আছে, যারা সোসাইটিতে সবচেয়ে টপ পোস্টে আছে, if they have the power of God and if they're not good, তখন কি হয়?
a manifestation of this in Full Metal Alchemist, which features a personification of God, which is also known as truth. Humans who commit human transmutation are given a glimpse of another world, a world in which the truth resides. They gain knowledge about alchemy proportionate to their sacrifice during their time in this other world.
Okay.
Look at the world we see every time we see truth. There's nothing in it. It's the home of all knowledge, but there are no physical objects. The seemingly empty dimension is actually full of more than we as a species will likely ever
basically the truth a character takes you to your own reality. It takes you to your own area of judgment day, I think, where it can either show you the knowledge or just let you go if you don't want it, যদি আপনার সব নলেজ না চান দুনিয়া।
fully understand. That's because the only things naturally present in the world that the character known as truth inhabits are ideas, or facts, which are not sensible things. There are no sensible things in the world of forms, only truth, knowledge, and whatever the human or homunculus character present brings along with them. It's almost like a visual representation of the world of forms, the world in which, as Plato describes, God lives. Even in Plato's division of the line, God and truth are practically one and the same. And it's made abundantly clear that truth is God throughout the series. And just in case there is literally any doubt that truth is meant to be Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood's God, the homunculus father tries to steal God's power for his own. And in the end, the one who punishes him is the exact same character in the exact same world known as truth. And that's to say nothing of the fact that the character himself literally identifies himself as truth and God in the same sentence. There's such a direct parallel between Plato's descriptions and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood's illustration that it seems practically intentional. To draw further connections between the representation of truth in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood and Plato's description, there exists the Philosopher's Stone. Sure, the Philosopher's Stone represents a highly coveted item by real-world alchemists, but it's still an interesting name. Obviously,
literally
Stone represents a highly coveted item by real-world
it gives
alchemists.
away this philosopher's stone এই জিনিসটা বানাইতে কি ইনগ্রিডিয়েন্টস লাগে বা কি কি লাগে শোতে এটা এই অ্যানিমেশনেই দেখাই দিতেছে অ্যান্ড এটা শুরুর দিন থেকেই দেখাই দিতেছিল তখন ছোট ছিলাম কিছু বুঝি নাই বাট
But it's still an interesting name. Obviously, men belong to the world of appearances, according to Plato's division of the line. But what about philosophers? Well, he believed that philosophers were higher on the line than the rest of humanity. He saw it as their duty to gaze into the world of forms, grasp what knowledge they can, and bring it back to educate man and improve the world of appearances.
By doing recreational drugs, I don't know. Kemne? How would you go to the how would you change your being? How would you go to the next form? How would you travel to another dimension or like into the other realm, into the realm where there is no form, যেখানে আপনার কোনো শরীর নাই বা আপনি জাস্ট একটা আত্মা, আপনি you would have to die, আপনার মরতে হবে, তাছাড়া তো there is no way. হ্যাঁ,
You could say that alchemy operates.
অ্যান্ড ওই নলেজটা যদি আপনি কোনোভাবে ওইখানে গিয়ে মাথায় রেখে আসেনও, আই বিলিভ হ্যান্ডেল করা যাবে না, বিকজ যা যা পাবেন ওর যে নলেজটা আসবে, আই বিলিভ ইট উইল বি আ লট অ্যান্ড আই ডোন্ট থিঙ্ক ইট উইল কিপ ইউ সেন। আমার মনে হয় আপনি পাগল হয়ে যাবেন।
Operates similarly to that description. An obvious example is what happens to humans who attempt human transmutation. They're literally dragged into the gate of truth. They gain knowledge, and they're sent back to their world. Just replace philosophers with alchemists. Of course, the process is less pleasant than Plato probably envisioned, but otherwise there are a lot of similarities. And all of alchemy operates in the same way, just to a lesser extent. Every time alchemy is performed, the gate of truth is involved, as evidenced by Edward Elric's inability to use alchemy of any sort after he sacrifices his personal gate of truth to regain his brother Alphonse's body. The Philosopher's Stone acts as an amplifier of an alchemist's truth to regain his brother's inability to use alchemy of any sort after he sacrifices his personal gate of truth to regain his brother.
Edward basically sacrifices his gate of truth, which means that he doesn't want to be a god. He's a human. ও একটা মানুষ, ও এটা অ্যাকসেপ্ট করে নেয়, hence he gets back his brother's body. Truth gives him back his brother's body. Sorry for ruining it, spoilers. Kintu yeah, I think the main message is don't try to be a god. হাতে পাওয়ার আসলে definitely not referring to anyone, but yeah, don't try to hold power for way too long.
Alphonse's body. The Philosopher's Stone acts as an amplifier of an alchemist's abilities, and allows them to transmute without any sacrifice. It eases the alchemist's ability to grasp the truth and use it to change their world, which is a direct parallel to the goal of a philosopher as described in Plato's dialogues. However, I also think there's a connection to Truth's motivations here. The homunculus known as Father spends the entire series attempting to gain the power of God. After he fails in doing so, he's personally berated by Truth. It seems that Truth's goal is to teach him a lesson in humility. When Edward Elric sacrifices his own Gate of Truth, knowing that he will no longer be able to perform alchemy, Truth congratulates Edward and says that he's found the answer. Symbolically, Edward is giving up his position as a philosopher, someone attempting to climb up the ladder by giving up his Gate of Truth, accepting his place in the world of appearances. It appears that the lesson that Truth is trying to impart is that humans should not aspire to be him, but aspire to be themselves. Of course, I cannot speak with certainty for whether or not Hiromu Arakawa intended for these parallels to be drawn. Try as I might, I couldn't find any interviews with the mangaka herself confirming or denying any direct Platonic inspiration. But the idea that it could be a coincidence is kind of interesting in itself, really. I like to think that Hiromu Arakawa, a Japanese woman of the 20th century, is somehow on the same wavelength as this ancient Greek patriarchal philosopher. Who knows whether Hiromu Arakawa read any of the Platonic dialogues? Well, she probably does.
She probably did. Kintu, it is interesting because, basically, if you do try to get the power of God in your hand, and over history, আমরা দেখছি অনেকজনই try করছে. You fly too close to the sun, you might just burn. Basically. So, it was a good video. I really liked it. I even subscribed. But assalamu alaikum. Hope you enjoyed.